Chewing loudly is a bad habit. Being chronically late and interrupting others is a bad habit. But being lazy is not. Not completely, at least. And yet, we treat laziness the same way. We label someone as unproductive, point fingers, and ask, "Why are you being lazy?" As if it were that easy. As if someone can snap their fingers, become enlightened, and just morph into the perfectly productive version of themselves. As if laziness is something that can simply be turned off like a light switch. But here's the thing, it's not. Laziness is different. We insist so fervently on treating laziness as a personal failing, something wrong with us, when in reality, if anything, the problem of laziness is societal. If anything, the problem of laziness is evolutionary. We aren't lazy because we are defective. We are lazy because we are human. And as much as we wish for it, evolution did not design us to be perfectly productive machines. It designed us to conserve energy, to avoid unnecessary exertion. In ancient times, that survival strategy made sense. You didn't just waste energy running around when you didn't have to. You preserved it for when it really mattered. For hunting, escaping predators, and gathering food. Now we're constantly running around, trying to complete 500 different things. While everyone knows and sort of understands the concept of burnout, fatigue, and just feeling like shit, we still persist on sticking our ostrich heads into sand and carrying on. And hence, we end up in conflict. Modern expectations tell us we should constantly be doing something, but our own bloody biology is wired to save energy. Laziness, in many ways, is just the body's response to a society that no longer aligns with how we evolved to function. It is our body telling us, begging us to slow down. But instead of honoring that instinct, we shame it. And worse, we shame ourselves. We look at laziness as a disease, like it is something that can be cured and purged, like it can be vaccinated for and controlled by medication. But that's not it, right? Being lazy is human nature. Before we dive into the root causes of laziness, we have to clear up another misconception: motivation. We often conflate laziness with a lack of motivation, but that's an oversimplification. Motivation is its own complex beast, one that can both inspire us and leave us stranded. Motivation is a high. It hits you like icy water on skin, leaving you heaving and breathless. It grabs you by the neck and pulls you to action. And the worst thing is that sometimes you're not even sure what you are motivated about. It's like having the fuel and the energy to do, but lacking the direction for it. It's like having the means to drive a jet engine, but not knowing the direction. And then motivation leaves, and it leaves you dizzy and empty. You go from the highest of highs to the lowest depths. I don't care for motivation. It always seems to arrive at the worst of times. Simply put, harnessing motivation is impossible. It is an unpredictable tempest that is both unreliable and short-term. And yet, motivation can be the greatest of gifts. See, broadly speaking, there are two types of motivation. We have the slightly drunk, overly friendly, and reckless, unreliable motivation that slides in, causes sparks, creates fires, and just leaves. Then we have the more dependable, more predictable, and disciplined brand of motivation, which, while being less flashy, can actually evolve. But getting back to the topic at hand, I think laziness and motivation, while being undoubtedly connected, are not as connected as we think them to be. Or rather, they are not as connected as we want them to be. I think that calling laziness just lack of motivation is criminally underselling and oversimplifying the issue. I think calling laziness just lack of motivation is akin to taking a broom and sweeping it all under a rug. You are not lazy. You are quite simply tired. Every day when I go to sleep at night, I am rarely ever truly cannot keep my eyes open exhausted. More often than not, I just need a break. A break from my phone I am maybe slightly addicted to, and my laptop I am definitely chronically addicted to. A break from the constant barrage of things to do and see and observe. There are entire days when all me and my slush of a brain wants is a quiet, dark room and nothing else. And on these days, am I being lazy? Or am I simply taking a break from the world? Everyone has those days when you wake up exhausted. Those days when you open your eyes and feel like there's a fat cow standing on your chest. How does that work? After all, sleep is energizing, right? So shouldn't we always wake up refreshed when we get good sleep? Well, yes, but kind of no. Because there are more than one type of exhaustion, and more often than not, laziness is a symptom of mental and emotional tiredness. Exhaustion from thinking about yourself, thinking about your needs, your wants, your future self's wants and needs, thinking about your own plans and your mistakes. We live in an age where every aspect of our psyche has been dissected and studied, and yet we cannot help ourselves but stick to the most basic of definitions. So laziness, more often than not, comes to mean just a sore neck and nothing more. We mistake sleep for rest. We still in this depression epidemic we live in, choose to think that simply laying in bed for 6 hours every night is somehow a fix for anything. So personalization, where life itself feels like a bad play you're stuck in. Days blur and you ask yourself, is this really it? You are just going through the motions, disconnected from your own existence. And it feels terrible. Not the kind of exhaustion a nap fixes. Burnout digs deeper. It's the result of a culture that glorifies constant hustle and shames rest. The advice? Push through, as if that works. Burnout isn't about needing more willpower. It's about recognizing that our own approach to productivity is completely broken. The system that celebrates exhaustion is the problem. The funniest part about the whole do the bare minimum strategy is that it works. It's almost like we are not meant to work like actual machines. Almost like there's quite a difference between being productive and being productive while being even slightly healthy. For me, it's not the 80-hour work weeks or the mile-long to-do lists that are the problem. No, the main problem I personally have with hustle culture is a lot more internal. It's the guilt. I think that not everyone knows how to relax. Because some, when relaxing, actually relax. Like they stop thinking and just let everything go for a minute. But others like me, relax in that weird way where it's half relaxing, half running through tomorrow's to-do list, half mentally cataloging what there is to do next week. You get the idea. The irony here is that doing less is often more effective and sustainable. When slow and steady becomes not the thing we point and laugh at, but rather what we aim to be, things just start working. We live in a cripplingly fast world, but even so, you have time. The trouble happens when we have to convince ourselves of the same. But at the heart of it all is our skewed understanding of productivity. We have been conditioned to think that productivity is simply about output, but it is a lot more nuanced than that. If you were to walk up to Steve down the street, hold up a microphone under his nose, and ask, "What do you think productivity means?" what's the most probable answer? 9 out of 10 times, the answer to this question would be something along the lines of a ratio of the amount of work done and accomplished to how much time said work took to be completed. And that's fine. That is not an incorrect definition. But again, like so many other things, this definition, while not being wrong, seems incomplete. It reminds me of a physics professor I had in university who refused any definition unless it was the simplest. Like, for example, the definition of work in the context of physics cannot be the energy transferred to and from an object via application of force along a displacement. Because that's not simple. We are trying to explain one keyword using another keyword that is also yet to be explained. Similarly, if the general definition of productivity is the ratio of work completed over time, we need to define what constitutes work, what constitutes completed, and what constitutes time. You know what's work? It's being 35 and being a manager at office, spending all day cajoling your superiors, putting out fires that will inevitably start, and just trying to do your damn job. You know what's also work? Being 35 and being a manager at work, and also being a mom, and also being a wife. Trying to slice out a time slot of the ever-shrinking pizza so you can spend some time with your family. You know what's work? It's being 35 and being a manager at work, and also being a mom and a wife, and also trying to stay sane. Somehow finding time for yourself. It sounds terribly depressing, but living itself is work. When you log off at 6 p.m., you are just done with one type of work, but still have other work to do. But when defining productivity and laziness as the absence of it, we only account for one type of work. No one cares to look at the guy who left work early to cook a nice dinner for his family, or the guy who left early so he can finally take some hours for himself. No, these people are very clearly unproductive, are hence to be shunned by everyone. So that's work defined. Most tasks are never truly finished. They are simply completed enough. That's why we use phrases like "done for the day." Some projects do eventually reach completion, but many remain in a perpetual state of progress. So when we talk about laziness, what we are really doing is measuring how much of the workload has been checked off. But the problem is that not all types of work are valued equally in this calculation. Sending an email or finishing a report is seen as completion, while getting a good night's sleep or morning stretches often isn't. The strangest part is that it is often easier for us to finish a work assignment than to stick to a regular sleep schedule or practice mindful eating. And hence, to correctly measure someone's productivity, we need to account for all their efforts, beyond just traditional work. Productivity isn't just about completing job-related tasks. It's about recognizing all forms of completion. From self-care routines to personal achievements. And without factoring in these broader aspects, we end up with a narrow and incomplete picture of what it truly means to be productive. Now, let's talk about time. Time is often viewed as this rigid, unchanging mistress who does not care whether you're working on a big project or simply trying to relax. It keeps moving, indifferent to what we're doing with it. We measure success by how efficiently we squeeze tasks into a finite amount of hours. But here's the kicker. We often fail to recognize that not all tasks take that same toll on us, and not all of them can fit neatly in time's rigid structure. Think about it. How often have you heard people talk about time management as if it's some magic trick that, if perfected, will allow you to conquer the world? Just wake up at 5 am, they say. You will have so much time to do everything. But that's not really how time works, does it? Time spent on a project isn't the same as time spent decompressing after a long day. Yet, when we look at productivity, we treat every hour as if it's interchangeable. I keep circling back to the same point. This idea that what we consider to be work can so easily change our definition of productivity, which in turn will change what we think laziness means. Being productive is great, no doubt, and while working harder can be challenging, it's at least straightforward. But being truly purposeful and efficient with your time is a much more difficult skill. Like every other nice thing in the world, laziness comes in threes. And when I say laziness, I'm not quite referring to laziness itself, but rather the other devils that cause it. I'm referring to fatigue and fear and lethargy. The way I visualize it is with an apple. An apple essentially has three parts: the skin, the flesh, and the seed. The skin is what we see. The skin is visible and obvious and cannot be hidden. The skin can also be peeled away to show the soft flesh underneath. The flesh is the main event. It is what connects the seed and the skin. The flesh is also leagues thicker and richer than the skin. And at the very center of flesh, we find the seed. The seed seems benign. An apple with a rotten skin or spoiled flesh is immediately noticed and chucked. But a foul seed can so easily be ignored. Laziness is this apple, and comparing the three types of laziness, which are physical, mental, and emotional, to the layers of an apple can help us really understand. Like the outer layer of an apple, physical laziness is the most visible and tangible. It's the reluctance to engage in physical activities and is often the first thing people notice. Just as the apple's skin protects the inner layers, physical laziness can be a protective response to exertion or exhaustion. The flesh of the apple represents the bulk. This is where we avoid thinking deeply, solving problems, or engaging in tasks that require focus and effort. The flesh, like mental laziness, provides sustenance but can feel heavy or burdensome when too much is required. Emotional laziness is the innermost layer. Much like the seed at the core of the apple, it is often hidden and not immediately apparent, but it can have significant impact on our overall well-being. Just as the seed holds the potential for growth, emotional laziness stems from a deeper reluctance to confront feelings, communicate, or grow emotionally. It lies at the heart of many personal struggles, fueling mental and physical laziness when left unaddressed. And it is worth mentioning that this does change for everyone. Some people somehow manage to look like polished platinum on the outside, while struggling with 1,000 things on the inside. We put this absurd amount of importance on being productive. We write books and host podcasts just to spread the gospel. We do this until we convince ourselves that being productive is being happy. And by that logic, laziness is the opposite of happiness. But if that were to be the case, then we won't learn about daily cases of accomplished, productive people destroying themselves. We also somehow equate productivity to being fit and healthy when it can so easily be the other way around. So, what now? How do we fix laziness? Well, firstly, I don't think we can. How do we fix something that is so interweaved with other parts of our psyche? Maybe one day we will have enough of an understanding of everything to fine tune ourselves. But that day is a ways off, and in the meantime, we have to do something. We can stop viewing laziness as a character flaw and start treating it as a signal. Stop treating it like cancer to be scalped out, but rather as a symptom of underlying needs and conditions. Laziness isn't a flaw. It's a reminder that the constant grind we are always on is not sustainable. We are humans, built for balance, not burnout. So maybe, just maybe, instead of fighting laziness, we listen to it.